Dr. Matterson. I'm so excited to be talking to you today. We've chatted before about some of the things you and I have in common. We're both physicians. We both have MS diagnoses. So we both have this unique experience of having to walk this line between patient and doctor. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. Pleasure.
So I wanted to start by having you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got diagnosed and what was that period like as you started navigating through the diagnosis while you're going through school and training.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed in 2015, and it was actually an incidental diagnosis. What happened was, at the time I was a radiographer, and I volunteered for a head scan as part of a clinical trial. And this scan picked up a lesion, and obviously at the time we had no idea what was going on, but this triggered a series of investigations. I was seeing neurologists very regularly. Ultimately, a diagnosis of MS was made, and yeah, it was tough to take. The diagnosis itself was actually my motivation to leave my career as a radiographer and apply to medical school. So I like to think it's a bit of a silver lining, a good thing from a bad situation. Yeah. So I'm here today as a doctor based on my diagnosis.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually a fascinating story. So here in the US, sometimes we call that thing that they found on your first scan an incidental loma. Like some just randomly find on a scan and you don't really know what it is because you didn't have any symptoms at the time.
No, I had nothing. Completely random. I mean, in hindsight, if I look back, yes, I probably had tingling, numbness. I had blurred vision, which I put down to fatigue. I worked too many night shifts, that kind of thing, or I've been to the gym, I've trapped a nerve, little things like that, things that were very easy to put down to other things. And it was only after my diagnosis, when we look back, that we went, oh, actually, that wasn't a trapped nerve. It was quite obvious what was going on there. So these things would come and go, as does happen in MS. My uneducated aspect, well, at the time it was, I've trapped a nerve, and then over time I've untrapped this nerve doing just whatever, and the symptoms have gone. Obviously, yeah, looking from a bit more of an educated standpoint now, no, this is MS, and this is how MS manifests. So
MS messes with your head, right? Yeah. I remember going, I'm good. No, I'm not good. No, I'm good. And then the next day, I'm not good. And then I'm like, I'm crazy because I don't even know what's normal anymore. And so, you keep talking yourself out of it, but then you talk yourself into it. And I think, this is why MS is hard to diagnose, right? I went to 4 neurologists who missed it, right? And they just chalked it up to other things. So it's a hard diagnosis to make. And one thing that's fascinating about your story is that you got diagnosed far sooner than you would have, or maybe you would have never gotten diagnosed. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I always think of this as well. So I didn't go looking for a cause for my symptoms. MS kind of came to find me. It was very strange. So I can't relate to many people in the sense of how I was diagnosed. What I can say is it started my treatment earlier, which I'm very grateful for, because evidence kind of suggests that the earlier you start medicating, the better outcomes. So I always sit there and think, maybe finding it early at the time was awful. It was horrible, and I hated the fact that I got on this scanner. But looking back now, 8 years forwards, I'm very grateful of how we found it, and it gave me the chance to start my drugs probably at least a year or two earlier than I otherwise would have, because no real symptoms started showing for quite some time after my diagnosis. But yeah, it was enough to completely change my life in the sense of my career is the big one. I'm where I am today doing the job I'm doing because of my diagnosis. So my message from MS is, it's not nice, but try and make something good of it. try and, you know, make a positive, change your life in some way, you know, because, you know, it's there, it's sticking around. So you might as well learn to live with it, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And tell us about your initial reaction and how you coped with this news that was pretty shocking.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing, I didn't cope. You know, I really struggled. I fell to depression. I drank a lot of alcohol. A lot of alcohol. I probably drank more alcohol in that year than I have in the rest of my life. I don't drink now. I've gave up drinking totally, but these are from past experiences. At the time, yeah, I was big on alcohol. It was my way of coping. It was kind of like the numbing effect of alcohol. Didn't tell anybody. You know, I told my family. Didn't tell any. I didn't. The problem was I didn't want to be viewed as that guy with MS. You know, I'm Daniel, and I've been Daniel to my friends my whole life, and then overnight it's like, oh, that guy's, and I didn't want that. So I kind of kept this hidden, to put it bluntly, and over time, I began living a lie. So I would portray this very happy, kind of, you know, outgoing person. And behind closed doors, no, I was a very, very sad, confused, isolated person who hadn't accepted reality for what it was. And I think that was the biggest driver of the depression, that I hadn't even accepted myself that this is happening or it's happened. And yeah, so
I'd say that's pretty common. I experienced the same thing. I was very private about it for at least 2 years. I think I didn't want to have other people feel bad for me or feel sorry for me. And then there's all the uncertainty of like, what's going to happen, right? It takes time to get used to that news and to wrap your brain around it.
yeah. Before my diagnosis, sorry, go on, please.
No, well, go ahead.
I was just going to say that before my diagnosis, I just associated MS with a wheelchair. So in my head, it's like, right, that's where I'm headed, you know. That is the final destination for me. And it's not always the case. And MS is different for everybody. And I think that's important to know as well, especially for newly diagnosed people. Don't think that, okay, I've been diagnosed with MS, this is where I'm headed, because that isn't the case, you know.
There's so much we can do now, right? We can start to early diagnosis, earlier treatment. We have more medications. And I think people are also turning on more to lifestyle treatments as an adjunct therapy or as an equal therapy to DMTs, and mixing those together to get the best outcomes. So I think we live at a time where we're going to have very different MS outcomes. And like you, I also was terrified of losing my ability to use my arms or legs. And, you know, I think over time, what I realized was no matter what MS takes away, there's always things I can still do. And as long as I can still connect with my loved ones and interact and enjoy them, that actually might be good enough for me if I can still have my brain intact and do the work that I love. Yeah.
I think it's important to appreciate the things you can do and not focus on the things you can't do, because that your mindset is so big and it is very much directed in what you focus on. You know, I can sit there and be like, oh, I used to be able to do this and now I can't. And then you're going to have this, you know, missing the person you used to be is something that I used to do. And instead of embracing, this is me now, this is reality. And I need to really like push forward with this, because once you've accepted it, it makes things a lot easier, in my opinion.
Absolutely. But it takes time, right? I think it takes on the order of a year or two to like fully wrap your brain around it and go, okay, I kind of understand what my new normal is. And,
you know, as the important thing again, it's different for everybody. Some people it takes a month, some people it takes a year, some people it takes 5 years. Everybody's different. And again, that's something else important to recognize. Nobody can tell you how long it takes. Nobody can tell you how to do it. You've got to just learn it as you go.
Yeah. And the only way to get to that place where you've accepted it, I think, is to go through all of the emotions. It's like you can't go around, you got to go through. You know, something that also I find a lot in MS is apathy. People who feel like they have no power, no say in their healthcare or in their health outcomes. Would you say that that's something you come across?
I would. I think it's really sad, but yeah, I do agree. I think the problem with MS is not many people know about it. And even patients who are newly diagnosed, there's a lot of unknowns with MS. And I think in the UK, I can say that treatment's very dictated by a neurologist, and you don't get much say in that. So you're just put on a drug, and it's like, right, this is yours, deal with it. And I've been put on drugs that I didn't really like, for example, and it's hard to get used to this kind of this. So my problem was, again, I went from a totally fit individual to somebody going, take this every week. It's an injection, get on with it. And I hated it. And I think that it changes your life, it does. And yeah, it's hard to it's hard to get used to.
I'm kind of chuckling here because you said your neurologist just tells you what you're going to take. Here, oftentimes we get a set of pamphlets and they say, which one would you like? And you're like, well, I don't know. What's the best one? You get the menu, and as a patient, you might be able to choose the one you want to be on. So I think that it's so important that we build a good healthcare team where we have a neurologist we know and trust who's really looking out for our best interest. But I think it doesn't end there. We need to have a full team of people really kind of looking after our mental health. I mean, how common is anxiety and depression and stress with MS? Also, I think you and I both know that, eating well, sleeping, exercising, those are all foundational things when it comes to treating our MS holistically. Are those things that have worked for you that you engage in?
Definitely. So we've proven through a lot of studies that smoking accelerates MS. Okay. So that's a proof of concept right there that toxins, you're putting things in your body that shouldn't be there, and it's directly influencing your disease. Why do we stop there? Who's to say alcohol doesn't do that as well? Who's to say chemicals put in artificial foods aren't doing that as well? Any chemical in your body will influence how things work, and your disease is no different. So yeah, I do think that, healthy lifestyle, exercise, hydration, avoiding things like alcohol or any toxin for that matter is going to play a huge role. I haven't drank now for, I think I'm on 124 days now. Not that I'm counting. And I feel great. I feel a lot more energy. I feel I sleep less, but I'm not as tired. I feel more productive. And what I also find is, when you get these symptoms due to fatigue, you haven't slept well, so you're a bit groggy and your symptoms seem to be a bit more prominent. I don't have any of them anymore. So straight away, by not drinking alcohol, I'm seeing a benefit in terms of my MS. I feel better mentally. You just said about mental health. God, I mean, my mental health, like I said at one point, was so low. And through a lot of, don't get me wrong, I know people with MS who take medications and things, and I have in the past. I don't now, because I like to think that the way I'm directing my life, I'm focusing on exercise, I'm focusing on healthy eating. I'm just trying to be a bit more mindful, and I'm accepting what I can do and what I can't do, and just having that mind frame is so important in how you view yourself and view life in general. And that has a lot to say about how your mental health is.
Absolutely. So there are things we can do, like cut out the alcohol, manage stress better, get out there and go for a walk or a run, whatever your body can do. And these things can help anxiety, depression, and lower stress. Or you can go to your doctor and say, I have anxiety and depression, and take medications. And that's a reasonable approach for some people, right? I'm not anti-medications, but what if you could just cut out the alcohol and feel better, right? Wouldn't that be really the root cause approach to improving your mental health? I think it's so important. And we don't often take the time to drill down and figure out, well, why is this person anxious and depressed? So, you know, and I found what you've just said to be very transformative for me as well. Over the last decade, and I got diagnosed 12 years ago, I've regained so much of the function in this left arm and hand. And I'd like to think that it has a lot to do with how much I exercise, how much I've changed my diet. I didn't know the first thing about a good diet when I first got diagnosed because it wasn't part of my training, right? So these are tools that I think are as efficacious as our drugs for MS. And we've got to start bringing them in because they work and they're powerful. Not to replace your drugs, but to use them together as an adjunct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people can come off of their drugs. You know, that's a decision you make with your neurologist.
Yeah, of course. And for me, you know, in the UK at least, I'm not sure about in the States now, a lot of emphasis from the neurologist is put on the medications and other disease modifying therapies. Take your medications, but no one's ever sat down with me and said, why don't you try changing your diet? Why don't you try and put back your alcohol? You know, nobody talks about that stuff. It's just medication, medication, medication. No one's ever said, how's your mental health? Do you need to see anybody for your mental health? Like, you know, it's just focused on this medication. Everything else is just put up there. Nobody seems to acknowledge that these also evidently play a role.
So you're in a very different medical system than me. You're at the NHS and we're in the US here. Very different systems. I think both sides were all pressed for time to see so many patients. It takes time to address mental health and diet and sleep habits. And you know, I don't think we can expect our neurologists to do that work. It's not part of their training. I think they should ask the questions and do a screening and then put you somewhere where you can get that support. And this is my big, you know, beef with our medical system is like, how come I came out of training with zero knowledge around nutrition? How come I was asked to work 30, 40-hour shifts, making me believe that sleep's not important? You know, that was me. That's what we do in our training here. So, you know, that's why I've created my online program where we can start teaching people that. It's just such an important part of MS care. And so I'm curious, like based on your regimen, is there something you do that you're like, this is the thing I got to do to keep myself healthy?
Exercise daily. That's my big one. Every day without fail. I bought a spinning bike because my balance isn't the best. So this is again going into acknowledge what you can do and what you can't do. Be sensible, but make sure, you know, you don't have to do it daily. That's just me. You know, I'm a bit of I probably go over the top sometimes, you know, but just do things that are right for you. Like, you know, some people it might be meditation. Just pick one thing, you know, if that's good for your mental health, you know, just do something that's going to benefit you that day. And I think as long as you practice these daily and make habits, you know, habitual living has so much going for it, you know. I think talking about the team that you mentioned earlier, you know, the healthcare team, you have to be part of this team. That's so important. You have a big role in this team of making your disease manageable. And, you know, you've just said yourself, nobody can change your diet for you. Nobody can force you to get on the exercise bike. Nobody can make you do any of this. Nobody can make you quit alcohol or quit smoking. You have to do this for you. And I think it's so important to educate, you know, that's probably the right word to use. I think people are more aware to make more informed decisions. And I think that's also where we're falling down, that patients don't have the right advice based on, you know, their knowledge isn't quite as high as a neurologist would be in MS. So maybe educate these people and show them why. You know, I spoke to loads of patients. They're not aware that smoking makes their MS worse. There's studies out there that prove this. How do they not know this? How are we letting them walk out the hospital and start smoking again? We know that this is bad. So giving them medication on one side, but then telling them to go home and letting them smoke, which is doing the opposite. Why are we not telling them, you know? The studies that are telling us do not smoke. So I think
there's lots of data, right? And so I would say even here, no one's ever asked me if I smoke as an MS patient. Maybe they just look at me and they assume I don't. Maybe it's easier to just assume, then you don't have to have the conversation, right? But We have so much data around the impact of toxins on the onset and progression of MS. Now, we're not saying toxins cause MS. We're just saying there's a relationship there. The evidence is mounting, though. And, just recently, I was speaking to somebody actually in the UK who actually thought that I was making things up when I was talking about there are things we can do to make our liver work better to push toxins out, using food, not using any expensive supplements and weird therapies, but, toxins like nicotine and all the other things that are in a cigarette get into our bodies. Well, there has to be a mechanism for it to exit. And there are things we could do through behavior to improve that. That doesn't mean you can keep smoking, but it's one way of offloading the body and the liver. So there's a lot of tools out there. And I find that in the groups that I run with my online MS wellness group, when we work together in a group, we can start educating each other. And this is all happening outside of the medical system because not everybody has access to a doctor like me who does integrative and functional medicine. So, getting this information out to people is so important. And if there are people listening that feel like there's nothing they can do, like I would love to talk to you and show you that there's thousands of things you could literally pick. Like I love what you said about pick one thing and just do that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to overload yourself, but just do something. Even, whether it's for your mental health. I mean, your mental health and your physical health are just as important. Yeah, I mean, a lot of, my neurologist, again, he's focused on physical health. No one's ever asked me about mental health, but if you can have a sound mental health, like if your mental health is in good check, you're going to deal with everything so much better, and it all comes hand in hand. And I think it's just important to pick something that you enjoy that's good for you, and it'll all, it all comes together,
And bring in family and friends or other people who want to do that with you. I think it's always easier when we have accountability and partners that kind of say, well, you were supposed to show up for our walk. What happened, right? It's too easy to say, I'm not going to do it today when it's just you.
Do you guys in the States have support groups, MS support groups and things like that?
We do.
So so they're really helpful as well. Getting together with like-minded people and actually being able to have the conversation. Because, if I go and talk to some of my friends who don't have MS, they don't understand what I'm trying to say because why would they? But if you can, surround yourself with people in a similar scenario, it just gives you a lot more. You've got a lot in common and you can support each other. Motivation. I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think you're speaking to the power of community and how we can actually heal in community by seeing other people going through similar struggles. And then we each find our own solutions. As unique as MS is, the solutions are very unique too, because we're all so different. So it's a lot of fun to see people put lifestyle habits into practice. Like this is what I get to see because I practice integrative medicine. I get to see people start sleeping an hour earlier and they go, oh, my headaches are better. My mood is better. My brain is working better. My memory is better, and we don't really have medications to help with brain health or memory. It's really, I think lifestyle is really the core of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the thing that's difficult with MS is, I say exercise, go for a run, get on your bike and stuff. But there are some people, and because obviously MS is a very, everybody's different is what I'm trying to say. And some people can't go for a run, some people can't get on a bike, but everybody can do something that's good for them. It doesn't have to be strenuous exercise, even like I said earlier, meditation, just things like that. Anything that kind of helps you as a whole person. Anybody can eat well, anybody can stop drinking. Anybody can stop smoking. And I know I'm making this sound very easy, and I appreciate that not for everybody, some people struggle with things like that. But there are things that everybody can do to help their disease.
Yeah, for sure. And I think mindset is really important. You mentioned that earlier. Being around the right people who reinforce good habits really helps you get farther. Yeah. So,
and I think this goes ways. If you surround yourself with people who don't quite get it, you do feel isolated. I've been there, I didn't tell anyone I had MS. So, I'm surrounding myself with very healthy, able-bodied people. I know in my head I can't relate to you, and you do feel isolated. So surrounding yourself with people in a similar position to yourself is only beneficial, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there are support groups, reach out. You can reach out to our program, Truemedicine. Our goal is really just to start showing people that there are other tools that we're not using that are so impactful. And I love that you're on Instagram. You are a young person with MS doing really hard work, you know, living out your dreams. And it's so inspiring to see that. You know, I appreciate that so much about you. How do people connect with you and to just kind of follow you on social media?
I think a lot of it must just be, you know, word of mouth. So I'm getting followers now. I've got followers from all over the world. And I'll tell you what the really nice thing is. I get messages randomly saying how much my page helps them. And I think that that's just so nice. The reason I started my page was because I didn't have that. And again, going back to what I was saying, I didn't tell anyone I had MS. I was diagnosed out of the blue. I knew nothing about it, or very, very little about it. I didn't have anyone in my circle who had it or had an experience with it. So I was alone. I had nobody to talk to. I had to deal with everything by myself. I went through depression, you know, I started drinking more, I did everything, and I did it all by myself. So if my page can give anybody just some kind of comfort that you're not the only person going through this, you know, there's people all over the world who go through this kind of thing. And you're not the first, you won't be the last, but we're all in it together. That is such a nice feeling, you know. And if I can give that to anybody, mission accomplished, you know.
Yeah, well, follow Dr. Matterson's page. It's excellent. And I enjoy seeing all your posts. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me and to tell your story and to show us a different way of working through MS.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful. Just for everybody, is my page highlighted anywhere, or do I need to?
I'll put it in the notes, and tell us what your Instagram is. Your Instagram handle?
Yes, my Instagram is the MS Doctor. So it's the.ms.doctor. And yeah, please feel free just to follow, and you know, let's do it all together, because at the end of the day, we are all in this as a team. So any motivation we can offer each other, it's brilliant. So
wonderful. Thank you for creating this international community around your Instagram page. It's just wonderful. Great.
Again, thank you, because you know, we're all helping each other. So very grateful.
Thank you for being here.